Where's my white coat? Much better. Cue the intro. Welcome back, everybody. As always, I'm Dr. Khan, and this is Morning Rounds. And today we're going to be talking about a product when not used might make your skin sizzle. Like crispy bacon. Nobody wants that. So let's dive right into sunscreens. Now, the sun has various wavelengths. There's visible light, and then there's shorter wavelengths. Shorter waves go from UVA, UVB, and then UVC. UVC is mostly filtered by the ozone layer, so we typically don't worry so much about it. UVB is the one that causes the burning, and UVA is the one that gets absorbed throughout the day that is actually linked to causing cancer, aging of the skin, sagging of the skin, wrinkling, all that stuff. Now, there's all kinds of lettering on the bottles, UVA, UVB, broad spectrum, resistance this, water that, dermatologist recommended, all kinds of different things. What do they actually really even mean? Well, let's start with SPF. What does it stand for? Sun protection factor. Let's start talking about UVB protection and how SPF plays into that. UVB rays are the strongest between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And UVB SPF spectrum is anywhere from 6 to 50 plus. And that is telling you how well a sunscreen protects from sunburn. The number after the SPF tells you how much longer you can stay in the sun before you start burning. So example, normally if after 5 minutes you start burning, if you don't have any protection on, an SPF of say 2 will tell you that you can stay in the sun twice as long before your skin would start burning. So meaning rather than 5 minutes, you can now stay out in the sun for 10 minutes. And say if you have SPF 10 and you normally burn after a couple minutes of being out in the sun, that would mean you can stay out in the sun 10 times longer before your skin would start to burn. So that would be 20 minutes. Now, theoretically, in the lab environment, an SPF of 50, you could theoretically stay out in the sun for 50 times longer before your skin would start to burn. However, in real life, you do sweat, and there is part of the product that degrades with sun exposure. So that protection technically isn't enough with just single application, is why they tell you to reapply it every so often, especially if you're swimming. It is important to note that only SPF 15 or higher has been shown to reduce cancer risk and prevent premature skin aging. But the FDA says that there's no evidence that anything SPF 50 and higher would give you any extra protection. Now let's talk about UVA. UVA rays get absorbed all day long. And the way to tell what protection a product provides against UVA rays is a little bit more trickier than just looking at SPF for UVB. The most common way of thinking about it is that you look at the number of your UVB SPF, and usually a third of that number is what the UVA protection is. So for example, an SPF of 15 will only give you a third of a protection for UVA. So considering if you have an SPF of 30 or 50, that third is relatively much higher than the SPF 15. Next thing is broad spectrum. What does that mean? That simply means that the product has both UVA as well as UVB protection. You might sometimes see acronyms on certain sunscreen products, basically describing high energy visible light protection. And this is protection against visible light in the blue spectrum. For some reason, this type of wavelength can cause pigmentation, like melasma. And standard sunscreens with UVA and UVB protection don't necessarily provide protection against that. So if you're someone who's prone to having pigmentation, especially out in the sun, or have past medical history of melasma, you might want to look for a product with that acronym. Most often, these products are tinted too, so it helps cosmetically as well. You might sometimes see sensitive or hypoallergenic labeled on the bottle as well. This doesn't come from the FDA. This comes from the company's own tests. Some brands will test their products on people with skin conditions such as rosacea or people with sensitive skin, and they'll gauge for irritation or inflammation. Many of the products within the same brand will actually have the same active and inactive ingredients, and the ones labeled sensitive or hypoallergenic tend to be a lot more expensive. So do what you will with that. You might also see dermatologist approved,
#1 dermatologist approved.
all kinds of labels like that. Well, that's just really for marketing. It just means that there was a dermatologist involved during the production process and they gave their seal of approval. It could have just been one consult and the consumer has no way of knowing what kind of tests the dermatologist was involved in. Again, do what you will with that. So the main takeaways are, you might want to choose a product with SPF 30 or higher to be able to have adequate UVA and UVB protection. Get a product that has broad spectrum labeled on it, and get a product that has water resistant on it. All right, types of sunscreens. There are two of them. There's mineral and then there's mixed. Mineral only contain either zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. Mineral only sunscreens are really great for sensitive skin. They usually don't have any fragrances, oils, or PABAs. They don't block your pores. They're good for when you're playing sports. They offer broad protection. And these days, they often don't leave that white mark you used to get 10 to 15 years ago. Now, on the other hand, majority of the sunscreen products are actually mixed. This is a mixture of both mineral ingredients as well as some chemicals. Most people can tolerate it, and there's a bigger selection to choose from. Tend to be a lot lighter and more cosmetically elegant. They offer good sun protection as well as good SPF, UVB, and UVA rating. Now, my goal is to help you be the most educated and informed consumer. So here goes. Many expensive brands actually have the same ingredients as your store-bought brand. For example, Neutrogena and La Roche-Posay. A lot of sunscreen in La Roche's line also say they have Celox Shield, which is basically a combination of 5 ingredients that Neutrogena has as well. But La Roche-Posay's sunscreen with Mexerol might be worth the money. Now, Mexerol is stable, it absorbs UV light and dissipates the energy as harmless heat. Mexerol isn't absorbed through the skin. And so far, there hasn't been any safety issues reported. Something important that I do want to touch on. Concern has been raised mostly by the Environmental Working Group, which is an American activist organization. Their view has been that sunscreens are potential endocrine disturbers. This is because a common ingredient in sunscreens such as oxybenzone can mimic the behavior of estrogen, a hormone. This was tested in fish in high doses. So the group labeled this ingredient as endocrine disturber because their surveys have shown that oxybenzone can be found in the blood of 97% of the population. But and a big but it is. There is no evidence reported in the scientific literature of oxybenzone being linked to any human health problem, except for photodermatitis, which is a skin reaction triggered by exposure to sunlight. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of compounds, both natural and synthetic, that if scrutinized the same way as oxybenzone, could be linked to problems. We live in a world filled with hormone-like substances, and a complete analysis of our blood would reveal hundreds of these. All of this goes to say that the risks of oxybenzone as implied by the Environmental Working Group may be overstated, but I think it is beneficial to stay educated. If you're someone who'd want to know what they've listed as safe sunscreen products, visit their website at ewg.org/sunscreen. What they do is they use a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst product, to rate these products. You can use the filter to select just sunscreens of a certain brand, but they have tons of brands listed on the website. So let's take a look at a couple of the expensive products that we have mentioned in this video so far. La Roche-Posay. According to EWG, they rated the sunscreen products of this line anywhere from 2, which is good, to 7. This brand produces certain sunscreen products that are actually, according to Environmental Working Group, a really bad product. Let's take Elta MD as another brand. This group rated Elta MD's sunscreen product anywhere from 3 to 4. 3 to 4 being moderate, so not too bad. Let's take Neutrogena now. This group rated Neutrogena sunscreen products anywhere from 3 to 10.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
And most of the Neutrogena products that were listed as a 10, I noticed tend to be sports sunscreen. Go check out the products that you use yourself on that website. It's also important to note that your products do expire. Most bottles will either have an expiration date labeled somewhere on the bottle, or most cosmetic products will actually have this label on them somewhere, either on the bottom of the bottle or the back of the bottle. It'll have the letter M and a number next to it. that tells you how many months that the product lasts. And this is true of most, if not all, cosmetic products. So please don't use expired product, throw it away. It's important to know that no sunscreen can filter out 100% of the sun's UVB rays. That is why it's also important to seek shade and wear sun protective clothing such as long sleeves, hats, while out in the sun. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Morning Rounds. I love doing these for you guys. I have a lot of fun making these videos. It does take up effort and time. So I'd really hope that you would like this video and subscribe to my channel so that more people can find out about this information. I'll be posting additional content on this channel too, other than Morning Rounds. So if you're interested in that, subscribing would be very helpful. As always, I've been Dr. Khan, and I'll see you next time on Morning Rounds.